Finn pressed himself against the cold metal wall of the observation deck, watching the stars through the massive viewport. His small blue fingers traced patterns on the glass, creating shapes that meant nothing to anyone but him. The Talveen boy had learned long ago that no one cared what he tried to say. 3 older children from the orphanage found him there. They always did. "Look, it's the broken one," Grick said, his orange scales catching the light from distant stars. The Kelvin boy was twice Finn's size and enjoyed reminding him of it. "Still pretending you matter?" Finn turned away, keeping his eyes on the stars. He had a small collection of items in his pocket. Shiny bits of wire, a broken circuit board, a smooth pebble from the cargo bay. They were his treasures, things he found while doing chores no one else wanted. Grix snatched the pebble from Finn's hand before he could react. "What's this?" "A rock." The other children laughed. "You collect garbage because you're garbage." Finn reached for it, his mouth opening in a silent plea. No sound came out. It never did. The other children scattered his treasures across the floor, kicking them under panels and into vents. Finn dropped to his knees, trying to gather what he could saved out. A boot came down on his hand. Not hard enough to break bones, but hard enough to hurt. "Speak up if you want them back," Grix taunted. "Oh wait, you can't." They left him there, their laughter echoing down the corridor. Finn gathered the few items he could find, tears running down his face without sound. He had learned to cry silently too. Life on Station Meridian had always been this way. The station hosted dozens of species, all living and trading together in the vast metal complex that orbited a dying star. Most species got along well enough. They worked together, ate together, made deals together. But no one wanted a mute Talveen child. Finn's own people had abandoned him here when he was very young. Talveen communicated through complex vocalizations, their language filled with tones and rhythms. A Talveen who could not speak was useless to them. They left him at the orphanage and never returned. The orphanage took in unwanted children from many species. Most eventually got adopted or sent to work programs. Not Finn. He had been here for 6 years now, watching other children leave while he remained. The caregivers fed him and gave him a bed, but nothing more. They spoke about him like he wasn't there. "The mute one needs new clothes. Make sure the defective Talveen gets his medical scan. Don't waste time on that one. He won't amount to anything." Finn worked harder than the other children, hoping someone would notice. He cleaned floors until they shined. He organized supply closets perfectly. He helped in the kitchen, moving quickly and efficiently. But hard work from a broken child was just expected, not praised. Administrator Dulac, the station's overseer of child services, viewed Finn as a budget problem. The tall Vrexian had cold silver eyes and believed in efficiency above all else. "Why do we still house the mute Talveen?" Dulac had asked the head caretaker last week. Finn had been right there, scrubbing floors, invisible as always. "He consumes resources but provides minimal value. Perhaps we should transfer him to labor services early. He's only 8 years equivalent," the caretaker replied. "Regulations say 12 minimum." "Unfortunate," Dulac had said, stepping over Finn like he was part of the floor. Finn learned to find joy in small things. The view of stars, the feel of warm water when he washed dishes, the smell of food cooking, even if his portion was always smallest. He drew pictures in the dust when no one watched, telling stories to himself that no one would ever hear. Sometimes he wondered what his voice would sound like if he had one. Would it be deep or high, loud or soft? Would anyone listen if he could speak, or would they ignore him anyway? The observation deck became his refuge. Late at night, when other children slept, Finn would slip away and watch the ships arrive and depart. He imagined traveling on them, seeing new places where maybe someone wouldn't care that he was silent. Today had been particularly hard. The bullying was worse than usual, and he had lost his favorite treasure, a small crystal that made rainbow patterns in the light. It was gone forever now, kicked into a vent shaft. Finn sat on the cold floor, knees pulled to his chest, and watched a transport ship dock at the far end of the station. It was different from the usual cargo vessels. Sleeker, with markings he didn't recognize. Human markings, though Finn had never seen a human before. The docking procedures took over an hour. Finn watched the whole thing, grateful for the distraction from his aching hand and empty pockets. When the airlock finally cycled open, he saw figures moving through the corridors below. Most headed toward the commercial district, but one figure broke away from the group, moving toward the medical wing. She was smaller than most species, with smooth skin and dark hair pulled back from her face. She carried a large bag and moved with purpose, like someone who knew exactly where she was going and why. Finn didn't know it yet, but his life had just changed forever. The human woman's name was Annie Reed, and she had been running from pain for 3 years. She had lost her son to an illness that human medicine couldn't cure. She had lost her husband to grief shortly after. So she ran, taking medical contracts on distant stations, moving from place to place, never staying long enough to feel anything. But pain has a way of finding you, even among the stars. Annie settled into her temporary quarters and reported to the medical bay. The station's chief medical officer, a bored Centaurian, showed her around quickly. "We don't get many emergencies," he said, "mostly routine scans and vaccinations. The orphanage wing is through there if you want easy work. Nobody else bothers with it." Annie found herself walking toward the orphanage wing without really deciding to. Maybe it was habit from her old life, when she had volunteered at children's hospitals. Maybe it was something else. She saw the children first. Dozens of them, various species, playing in a common area. Most looked healthy enough, if lonely. Then she saw the small blue child sitting alone in a corner, drawing in the dust with one finger. Something in her chest tightened. The child looked up, and their eyes met. His were large and golden, filled with an intelligence that surprised her. And something else, a bone-deep loneliness she recognized. Annie Reed had been running for 3 years. She stopped running right there. 3 days passed before Annie saw the boy again. She had been busy learning the medical bay systems and treating minor injuries among the station's workers. But her thoughts kept returning to those golden eyes and the loneliness in them that on her 4th day, a medical droid brought in a small patient. Annie looked up from her paperwork and felt her stomach drop. It was the blue child, and he had fresh bruises covering his arms. "Next patient," the droid announced mechanically. "Talveen Juvenile. Routine injury assessment." "Routine." Annie stood up quickly. "Those bruises are fresh. What happened?" The droid tilted its head. "Irrelevant. Scan and clear for return to housing." "I'll handle this," Annie said firmly. The droid beeped in acknowledgement and left. Annie knelt down, so she was eye level with the child. He flinched away from her, expecting pain or harsh words. Instead, she smiled gently. "Hey there, Aibanya. I'm a doctor. Can you tell me what happened?" The boy opened his mouth, then closed it. His small face showed frustration and shame that a caretaker who had been waiting outside poked her head in. "Don't bother asking. That one's mute. Born defective. Probably fell during chores. Clear him quick. We have others waiting." Annie felt anger flash through her, but she kept her voice calm. "How did he get these injuries?" The caretaker shrugged. "Children fight. He's weak. It happens. Are we done here?" "No," Annie said. "We're not done. Please wait outside." The caretaker huffed, but left. Annie turned back to the boy, whose eyes were wide with surprise. No one had ever told a caretaker to leave on his account before. "Let me look at these bruises, okay? I promise I'll be gentle." Annie examined him carefully. The bruises were defensive wounds, the kind you get when protecting yourself from hits. Her medical training told her one story, but her heart told her another. This child was being hurt, and no one cared. She treated the bruises with a healing gel that worked on most species. The boy watched her hands, still tense, still waiting for pain that didn't come. "Can you write?" Annie asked. The boy shook his head. "Can you understand me when I talk?" A small nod. "Good. That's good." Annie pulled out a small notepad and drew a simple picture of a smiling face. Then a sad face. She pointed to each one, then looked at him questioningly. The boy hesitated, then pointed to the sad face that Annie's heart broke a little. She drew another picture, this time of a person with arms raised in a shrug with a question mark. She was asking why he was sad. The boy took the pen from her hand, his small blue fingers careful not to touch her skin. He drew quickly, his movements practiced. The picture showed several large figures surrounding a small one. The small figure was on the ground. "They hurt you," Annie said softly. It wasn't a question. The boy nodded, not meeting her eyes. Annie made a decision in that moment. She didn't fully understand it, didn't question it. She just knew. "I'm going to come see you every day," she said. "Is that okay?" The boy's eyes snapped up to hers, searching for the lie. Everyone lied to him, promised things they never delivered. But something in Annie's face must have convinced him. Because he nodded slowly, Annie kept her promise. Every day after her shift, she visited the orphanage wing. She brought small gifts at first. A warm blanket, because she noticed he was always cold. Extra food, because his portions were too small. Paper and colored pencils, because she remembered his drawings in the dust. The other caregivers whispered about the strange human woman and her broken pet project. Annie ignored them. Finn, she learned his name from a file, was not broken. He was just unheard. She started teaching him simple hand signs from human sign language. At first, he was confused, but he learned quickly, his clever mind picking up patterns faster than Annie expected. Within a week, they could have basic conversations. "What?" Finn signed one evening, using the gesture Annie had taught him. His small hands formed the question carefully. "Why what?" Annie signed back. "Why you help me?" Annie paused. How could she explain to this child that looking at him hurt because he reminded her of her son, that his loneliness echoed her own, that maybe saving him was a way to save herself? Instead, she signed simply, "Because you deserve help. Everyone does." Finn looked at her for a long moment, then signed something that made Annie's eyes water. "No one else thinks so." "I think so," Annie signed. "That's enough to start." Their evening sessions became the highlight of Finn's day. Annie brought picture books from the human ship's library and showed him images of Earth. Oceans that stretched forever. Forests with trees taller than buildings. Animals that ran free. Finn absorbed it all, his drawings becoming more complex as he tried to capture the wonders Annie described. He drew whales breaching in alien seas. Birds with wings spread against blue skies. And always, in the corner of each picture, a small blue figure holding hands with a larger one. The other children noticed the change. Grix especially didn't like it. "Think you're special now?" He cornered Finn one day while Annie was working. "Think the human will protect you? She'll leave. They always leave. And you'll still be nothing." Finn tried to walk away, but Grix grabbed his arm, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "You're broken," Grix hissed. "A broken, useless thing that should have been thrown out years ago." Finn jerked free and ran, finding Annie in the medical bay. She saw his distress immediately, and he signed quickly what had happened. That Annie's face went through several emotions. Sadness, anger, determination. She knelt down and took Finn's hands gently in hers. "Listen to me," she said, speaking and signing both. "You're not broken. You're not useless. You're smart and kind and brave. Do you understand?" Finn shook his head. He had been told the opposite his entire life. Annie cupped his face gently. "Then I'll tell you every day until you believe it." That night, Finn fell asleep holding the blanket Annie had given him, feeling something he had never felt before. Something warm and safe and almost like hope. Annie sat in her quarters, staring at the adoption information she had pulled up on her datapad. The legal requirements were extensive. The bureaucracy was nightmarish. Cross-species adoption had almost no precedent. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Finn's golden eyes filled with hope that someone might actually stay. Annie Reed had never backed down from a fight in her life. She wasn't about to start now. Word traveled fast on Station Meridian. Within 2 weeks, everyone knew about the human doctor and the mute Talveen boy. Reactions varied from amusement to confusion to outright mockery. "Waste of resources," one merchant told another in the trading district. "That child will never contribute anything. Why bother? Humans are sentimental," the other replied. "It will pass when she realizes the truth." But it didn't pass. If anything, Annie's dedication grew stronger. She had created a comprehensive communication system for Finn. Hand signs for quick conversations. Picture cards for complex ideas. a small datapad programmed with symbols he could touch to form sentences. For the first time in his life, Finn could truly express himself. The transformation was remarkable. Finn had always been intelligent, but now everyone could see it. He asked questions about everything. How did ships travel faster than light? What made stars burn? Why did different species need different atmospheres? Annie answered every question or helped him find answers when she didn't know. She watched his confidence grow day by day, like a plant finally getting sunlight after years in darkness. The human crew members from Annie's ship started visiting too. Captain Owens brought Finn a model spaceship kit. Engineer Rodriguez showed him how engines worked. Medically taught him basic first aid. They treated him like any other child, with kindness and patience and genuine interest. Finn had never experienced this before. Having people who wanted to spend time with him, who smiled when they saw him, who cared about his thoughts and feelings. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying because he knew it could end at Annie's ship was scheduled to leave in 4 weeks. Then 3 weeks. Then 2. What happens when you go? Finn signed one evening, his small hands shaking slightly. Annie had been dreading this conversation. She sat down beside him and took a deep breath. "I've been looking into adoption," she signed. "It's complicated because you're not human, and I'm not Talveen. But I'm trying to find a way." Finn's eyes went wide. "Adopt? Me?" "Yes, you. If you want that." "Do you want that?" Finn nodded, so hard Annie worried about his neck. Then he launched himself at her, hugging her tight. Annie held him close, blinking back tears. "I'm not giving up on you," she whispered. "I promise." But Administrator Dulac had other plans that he called Annie to his office the next day. The room was cold and efficient, just like him. He sat behind a metal desk, his silver eyes calculating. "Dr. Reed, I understand you have become attached to one of our orphans." "Finn," Annie said firmly. "His name is Finn. The Mutalveen, yes. I must ask you to discontinue these visits. You are creating unrealistic expectations in the child." Annie felt her blood pressure rise. Unrealistic expectations? Like expecting basic kindness and care. The child is fed, housed, and given work appropriate to his capabilities. That is care. That is survival, not care. There's a difference. Dulac leaned forward. "Dr. Reed, you have been on this station less than a month. You do not understand how things work here. That child is a resource drain with minimal return value. Your emotional investment in him is illogical and will only cause pain when you inevitably leave." "I'm not leaving without him," Annie said. "I'm filing for cross-species adoption." Dulac actually laughed. A cold, harsh sound. Impossible. The legal requirements alone would take years. The biological compatibility assessments, the psychological evaluations, the cultural integration studies. Even if you were approved, which is unlikely, it would cost more credits than you could possibly afford. "I'll find a way." "No," Dulac said flatly. "You will not. I am denying your application before it begins. That child belongs to this station until he ages in a labor service. He has no family, no advocates, no rights beyond basic survival. You cannot change that." Annie stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "We'll see about that." She left before she said something that would get her banned from the station entirely. The situation got worse. Dulac began restricting Annie's access to the orphanage wing. Medical visits only, supervised, no personal items allowed. Finn was reassigned to harder chores in areas far from the medical bay. Their daily meetings became impossible, but Annie was resourceful. She timed her medical rounds to coincide with Finn's work schedule, slipped him notes and treats when supervisors weren't looking, used the human crew members as messengers. If Dulac wanted a fight, she would give him one. The other children saw this battle unfolding and reacted predictably. If the authorities hated Finn, then tormenting him was now officially acceptable. Grix and his gang escalated their cruelty. They destroyed Finn's drawings, stole his communication datapad and broke it, locked him in storage closets for hours. The caregivers looked the other way. Dulac encouraged it through deliberate inaction. Finn endured it all silently because that was what he knew how to do. But something inside him was changing. He had tasted kindness. He had felt hope. Going back to the darkness was harder now that he knew light existed. One night, after a particularly bad day, Finn managed to slip away to the observation deck, his favorite refuge, the place where he used to watch stars and dream of escape. Annie found him there. She had been searching for an hour, growing more worried with each passing minute. "Finn," she signed when she reached him. "Are you okay?" He shook his head, then signed slowly. "Maybe Administrator is right. Maybe you should stop trying. I don't want you to suffer because of me." Annie knelt beside him, taking his small blue hands in hers. "Look at me," she said and signed. "I have suffered. I lost my son. I lost my husband. I lost my home and my purpose. I have been empty for 3 years. Do you understand? Empty." Finn nodded, tears streaming down his face. "But then I found you, and suddenly I wasn't empty anymore. You didn't fill the hole my son left. Nothing could do that. But you gave me a reason to stop running from it. You gave me a reason to stay, to fight, to live again." Annie wiped his tears gently. "So no, I will not stop trying. Not because I pity you, not because I'm being noble, but because you are my son now in every way that matters. And I protect what's mine." Finn threw his arms around her neck, sobbing without sound. Annie held him, rocking gently, making promises she would move stars to keep. Neither of them saw Grix watching from the shadows, his face twisted with jealous rage. Neither of them knew that the real fight was just beginning. Grix made his move 3 days later. Finn was assigned to clean the lower maintenance shafts, a job usually given to older children because of the tight spaces and poor lighting. He worked alone, scrubbing ventilation panels and checking filter systems. When he heard footsteps behind him, 5 children surrounded him. Grix and his usual gang, but also 2 others who normally stayed neutral. Finn's heart raced. This was different. This was planned. "The human thinks you're special," Grix said, his voice echoing in the metal corridor. "Let's see how special you really are." They grabbed Finn before he could run. He fought back, scratching and kicking, but he was small and there were many. They dragged him deeper into the maintenance section, to a junction where several shafts met. "Let's play a game?" Grix smiled cruelly. "Hide and seek. We'll hide you, and your precious human can try to find you." They shoved Finn into a narrow shaft barely wider than his body. He scrambled to climb back out, but Grix sealed the access panel. The lock clicked into place with a terrible finality. "Have fun," Grix called through the metal. "Maybe someone will find you. Eventually." Then they left. Finn pounded on the panel, his silent screams trapped in his throat like always. The shaft was dark except for faint emergency lighting. It stretched ahead of him, narrow and cold, and getting colder, that he tried to stay calm, to think clearly like Annie had taught him. But panic was winning. The shaft felt smaller with each breath. The air felt thinner. Time passed. Minutes or hours, Finn couldn't tell. The temperature dropped steadily. His fingers went numb. His breath came in shallow gasps. He curled into a ball, trying to stay warm, but the cold metal leached away his body heat. Finn thought about Annie, about the promises she had made, about earth and oceans and forests, about being wanted and loved and safe. He thought maybe he would die here, in the dark, alone like he had always been. He almost gave up. Annie realized Finn was missing when he didn't show up for their secret meeting in the medical supply closet. She waited 15 minutes, then went looking. The orphanage staff claimed he was doing chores. Fine, she would find him herself, but no one had seen him in hours. His work assignment said lower maintenance, but he wasn't there. Annie's concern turned to alarm, then to fear. She found Captain Owens in the docking bay. "I need help. Finn is missing." The captain didn't hesitate. "Round up the crew. We're doing a search." Station security moved at their usual bureaucratic pace. Fill out forms. Check schedules. Wait for authorization. The humans didn't wait. Within 20 minutes, they had organized into search teams, each taking a different section of the station. Annie moved through the lower levels like a woman possessed, calling Finn's name even though she knew he couldn't answer. She checked every closet, every storage bay, every maintenance access point. Rodriguez found a clue. "Doc, one of the orphanage kids says they saw Grix and his gang in this area a few hours ago." Annie's fear crystallized into cold fury. Where? They followed the trail, asking questions, piecing together Grix's movements. It led them to the maintenance shaft junction. Annie saw the sealed panel immediately, saw the small scratch marks around the lock. "Get this open," she ordered. "Now!" Rodriguez pulled out his tools and worked on the lock. It seemed to take forever. Annie pressed her ear to the panel, listening. Nothing. "Finn," she shouted. "Finn, can you hear me? Tap on something if you can hear me." A faint sound. Metal on metal. Weak, but there. "Faster," Annie told Rodriguez. The lock finally gave way. Annie ripped the panel open and crawled into the shaft, not caring about the sharp edges or tight space. Her medical scanner showed a faint heat signature 20 meters ahead. She found him curled in a ball, his blue skin pale and cold, barely conscious. "Oh God. Fiend. Baby, I've got you. I've got you." Annie pulled him carefully from the shaft, her hands shaking. His body temperature was dangerously low. His breathing was shallow. She had seen this before, knew what it meant. Hypothermia. Oxygen deprivation. He was dying. "Rodriguez, get me emergency thermal blankets from a ship. Now." She wrapped Finn in her jacket, holding him against her chest to share body heat. "Stay with me, Finn. Please stay with me." Captain Owens arrived with a stretcher. "Security is on their way." "Forget security," Annie snapped. "Get us to the medical bay." They rushed through the corridors. Annie refused to let anyone else carry Finn. She held him the entire way, talking to him constantly, even though she wasn't sure he could hear. "You're going to be okay. I promise. I've got you. You're safe now. I'm not letting go." In the medical bay, Annie worked with focused intensity. Warming blankets. Oxygen. For fluids. She monitored every vital sign, adjusted every treatment, her training taking over even as her heart screamed in fear. The other medical staff tried to help, but Annie pushed them away. This was her son. She would save him herself. Hours passed. Slowly, painfully slowly, Finn's temperature climbed. His breathing steadied. Color returned to his skin. His eyes fluttered open. Annie was there, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Hey there," she whispered. "Welcome back." Finn's hand twitched in hers. Weak but deliberate. He was trying to sign something. Annie leaned closer, watching his small fingers form the word. "Mom." Something inside Annie broke and healed at the same time. She pressed her forehead against his, crying openly now. "Yes, yes, I'm your mom, and you're my son, and no one is ever going to hurt you again." Security finally arrived to take statements. Captain Owens handled them while Annie refused to leave Finn's side. The investigation was quick. The security footage showed everything. Grix and his gang had committed what amounted to attempted murder. But Dulac's response was predictable. "Children fight. It was a prank gone wrong. We will reassign the offenders to different duties. The matter is closed." "The matter is not closed," Annie said dangerously. She stood in the medical bay, Finn sleeping peacefully behind her, finally warm and safe. That child nearly died. Unfortunate, but not unprecedented. Children are fragile. Annie took a step forward. Captain Owens had never seen her look so fierce. "I am taking Finn off this station. I don't care about your laws, or your bureaucracy, or your precious efficiency. He is coming with me. Impossible. You have no legal right. Then I will become a fugitive. I will take him and run, and you will never find us." Dulac smiled coldly. "Your ship leaves in 48 hours. I can have you arrested for kidnapping before then. Then arrest me. But know this. I will fight you with everything I have. And humans are very, very good at fighting for what they love." Annie returned to Finn's bedside. The boy was awake now, watching her with those golden eyes. "What happens now?" he signed weakly. Annie took his hand, her resolve hardening like steel. "Now I keep my promise, no matter what it takes." News of the incident spread through Station Meridian like fire. Opinions split sharply. Some species thought Annie was making too much fuss over a damaged orphan. Others, particularly those with children, began questioning the station's treatment of vulnerable young ones. The human embassy got involved. Annie contacted them directly, providing full documentation of Finn's injuries, the security footage, everything. The embassy representative, a sharp woman named Patricia Howard, arrived 12 hours later. "This is bad," Patricia said, reviewing the files. "Not just for Finn, but legally. That administrator actively obstructed your adoption inquiry, then failed to protect a minor in his care. We can use this. Can you give me custody?" Annie asked desperately. "Maybe. Galactic law allows emergency protective custody in cases of severe abuse. But you'll need to prove ongoing danger and show you can provide proper care for a Talveen child." Annie had been preparing for exactly this. She pulled out a thick folder. Dietary requirements, check. Environmental needs, manageable within human habitats. Medical care imqualidad. Education plans, prepared. Cultural preservation, I've been studying Talveen customs and can teach him his heritage even though his own people rejected him. Patricia whistled low. "You've done your homework. He's my son. Of course I did." The legal battle moved quickly once the embassy pushed. Dulac found himself on the defensive, forced to explain why a child had nearly died under his supervision. The station's council demanded answers, but Dulac was cunning. He claimed the incident was being exaggerated by emotional humans who didn't understand station culture. He brought in a Talveen representative who testified that mute Talveen were considered too damaged for family placement by their own people. If his own species won't claim him, why should a human? The representative argued. The council hearing took place in a large chamber filled with representatives from a dozen species. Annie stood before them, Finn beside her in a wheelchair because he was still too weak to stand long. "You claim to love this child," a Vrexian counselor said, "but can you truly understand his needs? You're not Talveen. You cannot give him connection to his own people." Annie kept her voice steady. "His own people abandoned him. They saw his silence as a defect. I see his silence as a different way of being. I've given him tools to communicate. I've shown him he has value. What have the Talveen given him?" The Talveen representative stood angrily. "You cannot erase his heritage with human sentimentality." "I'm not trying to erase anything," Annie replied. "I'm trying to save a child who was left to die. There's a difference." The council argued for hours. Legal precedents, cultural concerns, biological compatibility. Annie answered every question, provided every document, met every challenge. Then they asked Finn to testify. Dulac's lawyer objected immediately. "The child cannot speak. His testimony is invalid." Patricia stood. "He can communicate perfectly well with the system Dr. Reed developed for him. The court has the technology to display his signs and drawings." The council agreed. Finn was brought forward, his communication datapad in his small blue hands. Annie had coached him, but she needn't have worried. Finn knew exactly what he wanted to say. A large screen showed his words as he typed them, mixing text with simple drawings. "My name is Finn. I am 8 years old. I cannot speak with my voice, but I can speak with my hands and my pictures. For years, no one listened. I was alone, invisible." He paused, gathering courage. Then Annie came. She saw me. Not the broken thing everyone else saw. She saw me. She learned my language instead of forcing me to learn hers. She protected me when no one else would. She calls me her son. I call her my mother. Not because we are the same species, because we chose each other. The chamber was silent. Even the hostile counselors looked uncomfortable. Finn continued, his small hands steady on the datapad. "You say I need connection to my people, but my people threw me away. You say humans cannot understand me, but Annie understands me better than any Talveen ever did. You say this is about law and culture and biology, but it is really about whether I matter, whether any child like me matters." He turned to look at the council members directly. "I nearly died 3 days ago, left in the cold and dark to freeze. Annie found me. Annie saved me. Annie fought for me. That is what mothers do. That is what she is. If you take me from her, you are telling every abandoned child in the galaxy that no one will fight for them. That is wrong." Finn's last image appeared on the screen. A simple drawing of a human and a small blue alien, holding hands, surrounded by stars. The chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors were moved. Others remained skeptical. The vote would be close. Then something unexpected happened. an older Talveen male, stood in the gallery. I wished to speak. The council recognized him. Dulac's face went pale. I am Riven, elder of the Talveen colony on Sector 7. I was present when this child was abandoned at the station 9 years ago. I advocated for keeping him then. I was overruled. Riven's voice was heavy with regret. Our people made a mistake. We valued vocal ability over the child himself. We threw away a bright, clever boy because he was different. Now a human shows us our shame by doing what we should have done, loving him despite his difference. Because of his difference. He turned to the council. If you deny this adoption, you validate our mistake. You say that different children deserve less love. But if you approve it, you say that family is built on love, not biology. That any being who will fight for a child deserves to raise that child. I vote for approval. Let the humans show us how to be better. The chamber buzzed with shocked conversation. A Talveen elder admitting fault was unprecedented. The council deliberated for 2 more hours. Annie paced outside, holding Finn's hand, praying to gods she wasn't sure she believed in. Finally, they were called back. The head counselor, a Centaurian matriarch, spoke gravely. This council has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We find that Finn has been failed by multiple systems meant to protect him. We find that Dr. Annie Reed has demonstrated exceptional capability and commitment to his welfare. Annie's heart hammered. However, cross-species adoption sets a dangerous precedent. We cannot approve it lightly. Annie's stomach dropped. Therefore, we grant emergency protective custody to Dr. Reed for a probationary period of 1 standard year. During this time, she will be monitored to ensure proper care. If successful, permanent adoption will be approved. Annie burst into tears. Finn stared at the council in disbelief. You may take custody of the child immediately, the counselor continued. Administrator Dulac will face review for his handling of this case. This hearing is concluded. Annie dropped to her knees and pulled Finn into her arms. He wrapped his small arms around her neck and cried silently into her shoulder while she cried out loud for both of them. We did it, Annie whispered. You're coming home. You're coming home with me. Patricia approached them with paperwork. Your ship leaves in 6 hours. I suggest you start packing. Annie laughed through her tears. We don't have anything to pack. Then let's go home. The ship's departure felt like escaping a nightmare. Finn stood at the viewport in Annie's quarters, watching Station Meridian shrink into the distance until it was just another point of light among millions. Annie stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder. Having second thoughts, Finn shook his head emphatically and signed, never going back. Good, because neither am I. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. For Finn, it was the longest period of safety he had ever known. He had his own small cabin next to Annie's, with a real bed and warm blankets and a lock on the door that only he controlled. The crew treated him like a little brother. Rodriguez taught him basic engineering. Lee showed him how to identify different alien physiologies. Captain Owens let him sit on the bridge during non-critical operations, explaining how navigation worked. But the best times were evenings with Annie. She would make dinner in the small galley, teaching him to cook simple human food. They would eat together, talking through signs and pictures and the growing vocabulary of their shared language. Tell me about Earth again, Finn sighed one night. Annie smiled. She had told him 100 times already, but she never tired of it. It's mostly water. Deep blue oceans that go on forever. There's land too, with mountains and forests and deserts. The sky is blue during the day and black at night, filled with stars, but just one moon. Just one. Finn sighed, amazed. Station Meridian orbited a planet with 7 moons. Just one. But it's beautiful, and the air smells like growing things. Trees and grass and flowers. Nothing like recycled station air. Will people like me there? Finn signed hesitantly. Annie took his hands gently. Some will, some won't. Humans can be cruel too. But you'll have me, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. And you'll have our community. People who've already heard your story and can't wait to meet you. Finn processed this quietly. Then signed, scared. Me too, Annie admitted. New things are scary, but we're doing them together. The fear was real. Annie had nightmares about failing the probationary period about Finn being taken away, about not being enough. But every morning, Finn would knock on her door, and they would have breakfast together, and the fear would fade. Finn had his own nightmares. He would wake up screaming silently, convinced he was back in the maintenance shaft or being cornered by bullies. Annie would come running every time, holding him until the terror passed. "I've got you," she would whisper. "You're safe. You're home." Slowly, Finn began to believe it. 2 days from Earth. Annie sat Finn down for a serious conversation. "There's going to be a lot of attention when we arrive," she signed. "News crews, maybe. Your story got out. Some people think what we're doing is wonderful. Others think it's wrong. Are you okay with that?" Finn thought about it, then signed. "Will you be there?" "Every second." "Then I'm okay." Earth appeared in the viewport like a blue marble, swirled with white clouds. Finn pressed his face to the glass, his eyes wide with wonder. He had never seen so much blue. "That's home," Annie signed. "Our home." The ship landed at a human colony on the northern continent, a place called Riverside. It was small by Earth standards, only a few thousand people, but to Finn it seemed impossibly huge. They disembarked to a crowd of people. Not threatening, but curious and welcoming. Someone had hung a banner. "Welcome home, Finn." Finn hid behind Annie, overwhelmed. She signed to him, "One step at a time. We'll go slow." A small group approached. An older woman with kind eyes, a man with gray hair, a young couple with a baby. "Annie," the older woman said warmly. "It's good to have you back." "Mrs. Patterson," Annie replied, hugging her. "This is Finn." Mrs. Patterson knelt down to Finn's level. "Hello, Finn. I have a grandson about your age. He's been practicing the signs Annie taught us. Would you like to meet him?" Finn looked at Annie, who nodded encouragingly. He signed slowly. "Okay." A boy emerged from the crowd, maybe a year older than Finn, with red hair and freckles. He signed carefully. "Hi, I'm Ben. Want to see the river?" Finn blinked in surprise. The boy knew sign language. He looked at Annie again, who was crying happy tears. "Go ahead," she signed. "I'll be right here." Finn took a tentative step toward Ben, then another. The two boys walked toward the river, Ben chattering and signing enthusiastically while Finn listened with cautious interest. Annie watched them go, her heart full. "You did good," Captain Owen said, appearing beside her. "Real good. We're not done yet. 1 year probation. You'll pass. Anyone can see that boy loves you." "I love him too, more than I thought possible." The first weeks on Earth were challenging. Finn struggled with the open sky, so used to walls and ceilings. The sounds of nature frightened him. The bright sunlight hurt his eyes. Wind was terrifying, but Annie was patient. She took him outside for short periods, letting him adjust gradually. She explained every new thing, answered every question, held his hand through every fear. Slowly, Finn adapted. He learned to love the feel of grass under his feet, the smell of rain, the sound of birds. He made friends with Ben and other children who learned to communicate with him. Annie enrolled him in school with adaptive technology. She taught him about Earth's history and cultures. She helped him maintain connection to Talveen heritage through books and recordings, even though most Talveen still wanted nothing to do with him. 6 months into the probationary period, a council representative came for an inspection. They interviewed Finn alone, asking if he was happy, if he was well cared for, if he wanted to stay. Finn's answer was simple. He showed them his room, filled with drawings of his new life. He showed them his school projects. He showed them photos of his birthday party, the first he had ever had. Then he showed them one final picture. Annie and Finn, holding hands, standing in front of their small house with Earth's blue sky behind them. At the top, carefully written, "My family." The representative smiled. "I think we have our answer." 1 year after leaving Station Meridian, the final adoption papers were approved. Annie and Finn stood in a small courthouse while a judge made it official. From this day forward, Finn is legally recognized as the son of Annie Reed, with all rights and protections afforded to any child of Earth. "Congratulations to you both." Annie cried. Finn cried. Half the courtroom cried. That night, they celebrated with friends and neighbors. Ben gave Finn a friendship bracelet. Mrs. Patterson made Finn's favorite Earth food, pasta with cheese. Captain Owens sent a message from halfway across the galaxy. Told you so. As the party wound down and guests left, Annie and Finn sat on their porch, watching Earth's single moon rise over the river. Happy, Annie signed. Finn nodded, then signed back. Home. Finally home. He leaned against her, and she wrapped her arm around him, holding her son close under alien stars that had become familiar. Finn had endured cruelty and survived abandonment. He had lived through years of silence and invisibility. But one human woman had seen him, had chosen him, had fought for him. And in doing so, she had shown the galaxy something it often forgot. That love was not limited by species or biology. That family was built through choice and commitment. That every child, no matter how different, deserves someone who would never stop fighting for them. Finn fell asleep on the porch that night, safe and warm and loved. Annie carried him inside, tucked him in a bed, and kissed his forehead like she did every night. "Sweet dreams, my brave boy," she whispered. "You're home now. You're finally home." And he was.